Have you ever realized how much energy you've wasted on meaningless arguments? How many times you've been dragged into conflicts only to be left drained, frustrated, and empty? The truth is, there's a hidden power that very few people truly master yet. Once you do, it can transform your entire life. That power is the art of ignoring. But don't get it wrong. Ignoring doesn't mean being cold or weak. It means being wise. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do isn't proving you're right, but choosing not to react at all. The trap of reaction. From an early age, we've been taught if someone attacks, defend yourself. If someone challenges you, prove you're right. But have you ever thought maybe that's exactly what they want? Think about it. When someone throws an insult or drops a nasty comment, are they really looking to understand your point of view? Not at all. What they're looking for is your reaction, your anger, your discomfort, your frustration. Because the moment you react, they win. Every time we fall for that trap, we hand over our energy to someone who doesn't deserve it. It's like sailing on the ocean, but stopping every time someone throws a rock at you just so you can throw it back. You waste time, you lose direction, and you burn out over something that doesn't even matter. The automatic reflex. The problem is reacting has become automatic. Someone says something hurtful, and instantly we snap. We argue, we yell, we fight desperately to defend ourselves. But when it's all over, what do we really gain? How many arguments have ever ended with both sides shaking hands saying, "Wow, that was amazing. We totally understand each other now"? Almost none. Because most arguments aren't about understanding at all. They're about ego. Ego wants to win. Ego wants to dominate. Ego wants to prove superiority. But here's the truth. Real strength doesn't come from proving anything. It comes from not needing to. A story worth remembering. There's an old story about a man who was insulted in the middle of the street. Instead of responding, he simply smiled and walked away. A bystander asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" The man replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, who does it belong to?" That's exactly what insults are, a toxic gift. Most of us accept it instantly without even realizing. But you don't have to. You always have the power to refuse. When you choose not to react, you're not weak. You're actually protecting your peace, your energy, and your mind. Never let someone else's careless words take control over your emotions. You don't have to react to everything. You don't have to fight every single battle. In fact, there's something incredibly powerful about knowing when to ignore. Not because you're careless, but because you're wise enough to understand that not everything deserves your energy. Sometimes the smartest move you can make is to do absolutely nothing. Just observe. Watch how someone tries to trigger you and refuse to give them what they're looking for. They expect an outburst. Give them silence instead. That's the moment the power shifts. The one who doesn't react, the one who refuses to be dragged into the drama, is the one who truly holds control. Why do we argue so much? Picture this: you throw a stone into a pond. Ripples appear for a moment, but soon the water settles back into stillness. It doesn't cling to the disturbance. It doesn't resist. It simply flows. But people are different. We don't just react when provoked. We often look for conflict without even realizing it. Why? Because we've been conditioned to believe that arguing is necessary, that proving we're right somehow makes us stronger. But here's the truth. Most arguments aren't about truth at all. They're about validation. When someone contradicts us, we don't just hear a different opinion. We feel like our identity is being attacked. That discomfort drives us to fight back. We argue not to understand, but to defend the image of who we believe we are, as if losing an argument meant losing a part of ourselves. The real roots of conflict. If you look closely, you'll notice something: most conflicts don't come from logic. They come from unresolved emotions. A person having a bad day is more likely to pick a fight. Someone who feels insecure will often try to bring others down just to feel taller. More often than not, arguments have little to do with the topic itself and everything to do with the emotional baggage people are carrying inside. And here's the dangerous part: if that baggage is filled with anger, frustration, or fear, and you engage, you end up absorbing their energy. What started as a small disagreement quickly turns into an emotional battlefield. At some point, it's no longer about the issue, it's just about winning. But winning what exactly? What do you gain from winning an argument when the other person was never really listening in the first place? The answer is simple: nothing at all. At the end of the day, endless debates leave us with nothing but exhaustion, tension, and distance. We argue with our partners, our friends, even total strangers on the internet. And when it's all over, nothing has truly changed, except that we feel drained and weary. So what was the point of it all? Buddhist philosophy teaches a powerful truth: suffering comes from attachment. We cling to our opinions, to the need to be understood, to the belief that disagreement means we've somehow failed. But what if we could let go of that attachment? What if we stopped treating every disagreement as a personal attack? Letting go to find freedom. The truth is, you don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need anyone's approval for your truth to remain valid. Realizing this is liberating. It opens a door to inner freedom. And this is where the power of non-reaction comes alive. It doesn't mean silencing yourself. It doesn't mean avoiding meaningful conversations. It means learning to tell the difference between a discussion that leads to growth and one that only drains your energy. It's about knowing when to speak and when to walk away. The art of silence, ultimate strength. Ignoring is not indifference. Sometimes it is pure wisdom. When you refuse to let meaningless noise invade your mind, you unlock something even greater: the art of the non-response. In a world where everyone feels the need to speak, to argue, to defend, to prove themselves, the one who chooses silence is the one who masters themselves. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means refusing to play a game where nobody truly wins. Imagine this. Someone stands in front of you shouting, waiting for you to shout back. But instead of reacting, you remain still. Your eyes calm, your face unshaken. They get frustrated, raise their voice even louder, desperately trying to provoke you. Yet you give them nothing. Eventually, their energy runs out, and their anger dissolves into nothingness. That is the art of the non-response. Because most people aren't seeking genuine conversation. They're seeking a reaction. They want to see you lose control, raise your voice, stumble for words. But when you withhold that reaction, the power shifts back to you. Think of those who try to provoke you like fishermen casting their line, waiting for you to bite. And the smartest way to win that game: don't play. This isn't about repressing your emotions or pretending you don't care. It's about observing before you act. Ask yourself, does this truly deserve my energy? Will this conversation lead anywhere, or will it just pull me into an endless cycle? Because every single time you respond, you are investing your attention, and attention is one of the most valuable currencies you have. The ego's trap. The ego whispers, if you don't respond, you're weak. If you don't fight back, they've won. But the truth is the opposite. Nothing is more powerful than showing that no one can shake you. Calmness disarms anyone. As Buddhist philosophy says, the wind may stir up dust, but it cannot move the mountain. When you practice the art of non-response, you become that mountain, steady, grounded, unshakable. This doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. It doesn't mean nothing matters to you. It means you choose wisely which battles are worth fighting and which ones aren't worth a single second of your peace. When silence speaks louder than words, sometimes the best response is no response at all. Not because you have nothing to say, but because your silence says more than words ever could. When someone tries to provoke you and doesn't get the reaction they crave, they realize they have no control over you. And once people see they can't manipulate you with words, they stop trying. The greater gift, inner freedom. But there's something even deeper in this practice. Non-reaction doesn't just protect you from pointless conflict, it strengthens your mind. You begin to notice that most emotions are just fleeting impulses. Anger, frustration, the urge to defend yourself. None of it lasts if you simply let it pass without acting on it. Non-response isn't just a way to avoid arguments, it's a path to inner freedom. When you no longer depend on the opinions of others, when you no longer feel the need to validate yourself in every conversation, you start experiencing a peace that cannot be bought. And in that state of calm, something even more powerful emerges: clarity. When you're no longer trapped in meaningless arguments, you gain more time to think, to create, and to focus on what truly matters. And perhaps the most life-changing realization of all is this: not everything deserves your attention. When you learn to stay silent at the right moments, you also learn when to speak. And that's where true wisdom lies. Silence for the sake of silence is meaningless. But knowing when to speak and when to hold your tongue, that is real power. Not every situation requires a response, but that doesn't mean you should stay quiet forever. There are moments when silence brings peace, and there are also moments when speaking up can change everything. The balance between voice and stillness, the key is simple: knowing when your words add value and when they don't. Unfortunately, most of us get this balance wrong. We speak when we shouldn't, and we stay silent when our voice is needed most. Emotions take over. We lash out at provocations without thinking, but hesitate when something truly important needs to be addressed. And that imbalance creates conflict within ourselves. A Buddhist teaching. There's a timeless teaching in Buddhism: before you speak, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If the answer to any of these is no, then perhaps silence is the wiser choice. But when all 3 answers are yes, your words can become a powerful tool for change. If someone attacks you just to provoke a reaction, you don't need to defend yourself. Not because you lack arguments, but because you know the discussion will go nowhere. But if someone is genuinely trying to understand, if there's an opportunity for real dialogue, then it's worth speaking. Silence, it says, strategy, not indifference. Silence, when used wisely, is not indifference, it's strategy. Think about it. How many times have you tried explaining something to someone who had already decided not to listen? No matter how well you spoke, their mind was closed. Why waste your energy? You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to win every debate. Some battles, even if you win them, are not worth fighting. But there are also times when speaking up is essential, when someone crosses a boundary, when your words can prevent harm, when your voice can help another person. In those moments, silence is no longer an option. The problem is we often confuse ego with truth. We think we must speak because our pride is on the line. But remember, the ego doesn't seek truth. It only seeks satisfaction. The ego always seeks to dominate. But once you recognize that you begin to let go of the urge to respond to everything, not everything needs your voice, but some things do need to be said. And knowing the difference is what separates an impulsive reaction from a wise response. When you master that balance, your life begins to transform. You stop wasting energy on meaningless conflicts and start using your words only where they truly matter. This is where everything starts to make sense, because once you learn to stay silent when it's not worth it, and to speak when it truly matters, you unlock something even greater: the ability to deactivate conflict before it even begins. Smart strategies to avoid conflict. Many people think avoiding an argument means surrendering, staying silent, or walking away. But there's a smarter way. It's not avoidance, it's strategy. The truth is, most arguments don't start with logic. They start with emotion. When someone lashes out, they're not always speaking from reason. They're reacting from frustration, anger, or insecurity. And if you meet that energy with the same energy, the clash is inevitable. But if you break the cycle before it escalates, the argument loses its power. One of the most effective ways to do this is by using phrases that don't fuel confrontation. Instead of getting defensive, you can say things like, "I see your point. Let's talk about this later when we're both calm." These responses don't mean you agree, but they also don't give the other person more fuel to keep pushing. Don't take everything personally. Another key strategy is not taking things personally. Often, arguments have nothing to do with you. People are just looking for a place to unload their frustrations. If you refuse to engage, they lose their reason to keep fighting. A neutral response like, "I'm not going to argue about this right now," or even complete silence, can make them realize their attempt to provoke you isn't working. And sometimes humor can be one of the most powerful tools. If someone tries to provoke you expecting you to explode, but instead you respond with calmness or light humor, you take away their power. Not because you're making light of the situation, but because you're refusing to give them what they want. The most important thing to remember is this: you are never obligated to join every conflict someone tries to drag you into. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to convince anyone. You can walk away from an argument without saying a single word. And when you do, you don't lose. You actually gain something far more valuable: your peace. Once you begin to apply these strategies, you realize that true power isn't about winning arguments. It's about not needing them at all. And when you reach that point, you unlock something even greater: freedom. Freedom to detach from anything that doesn't add value to your life. That's the moment everything shifts. That's when you finally begin to live with real inner tranquility. The freedom of not taking the bait. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that nothing external can disturb your inner peace, no matter what people say, no matter what opinions they throw at you, no matter how hard someone tries to provoke you. It simply doesn't reach you. Not because you're avoiding reality, but because you've developed something far more powerful: a mind that cannot be shaken. This is what happens when you master the art of not getting hooked. It's not about ignoring everything or pretending not to care. It's about truly understanding that most conflicts, most arguments, most provocations, none of them actually deserve your energy. When you finally reach that realization, you free yourself from a heavy burden that most people carry without even noticing. Taking back control. The truth is, most people live at the mercy of whatever happens around them. Someone insults them, and their mood collapses. Someone disagrees, and they feel personally attacked. Someone criticizes, and they instantly feel the need to fight back. In other words, their peace is entirely dependent on the actions of others. But when you stop reacting, when you stop letting external circumstances dictate your internal state, something incredible happens. You take back control. Think about it. How many of your worst days weren't truly bad because of what happened, but because of how you reacted to it? How much unnecessary stress have you created by engaging in situations you could have simply ignored? And how much precious energy have you wasted? Fighting battles that never really mattered in the first place. Some battles were never worth fighting in the first place. When you learn to let go, to detach yourself from meaningless conflicts, you begin to see life from a completely different perspective. You realize that most of the things that used to upset you were never really that important. You stop giving power to what doesn't deserve it. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself in every conversation. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless. On the contrary, it means being selective with your energy. It means making a conscious decision. Does this deserve my response? And most of the time, the answer is no. The lesson of letting go. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from attachment, and one of the greatest attachments people have is the need to be right, the need to be understood, the need to defend their opinions. But when you release that need, when you realize that your peace is more valuable than winning an argument, you gain something far greater than being right. You gain freedom. At that point, you are no longer a slave to your reactions. You don't get dragged into other people's emotional storms. You no longer waste hours justifying yourself to those who never wanted to understand you in the first place. And you stop being affected by things that in the grand scheme of life don't actually matter. The strength of calmness. Of course, this doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. What it means is that you set your boundaries not through anger, but by standing firm in your peace. Because nothing confuses and disarms an aggressor more than someone who refuses to engage. The ripple effect, and the best part is this. Once you master this art, people notice. Those who used to provoke you stop trying because they no longer get the reaction they crave. Those who used to argue with you lose interest because they see you're no longer emotionally invested. Over time, you begin to attract a completely different kind of energy, one that matches the inner peace you've cultivated. This is the kind of peace that can't be faked, the kind of peace that comes from knowing nothing external can ever take away what's inside you. A peace that doesn't depend on approval from anyone else. We often get caught up in arguments just to feel validated, just to have the last word. But once you experience true freedom, you'll never want to go back. Because ultimate freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about not needing anything from anyone in order to be at peace. It's knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, you remain unshaken. So next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, don't fight it. Just smile. Stay still and let them exhaust themselves. Let the noise pass through you like wind through the trees. Because when you stop giving your attention to things that don't deserve it, you gain something far more valuable. Your own peace. The path to an unshakable mind. Learning to ignore what doesn't matter is just the first step. The real transformation happens when you train your mind to the point where you no longer even need to remind yourself to ignore. You don't just resist reacting. You stop perceiving those provocations as significant at all. The noise around you doesn't just bother you less, it eventually ceases to be noise altogether. But how do you reach that state? Understanding the theory isn't enough. You have to train your mind daily, just as you would train your body to become stronger and more resilient. Emotional stability isn't something people are simply born with. It's a skill. And like any skill, it requires practice and dedication. The practice of self-observation. One of the first steps is to observe your mind without judgment. Every time you feel the urge to argue, to judge yourself to react, don't focus on the external situation. Focus inward. Ask yourself, what emotion is arising? Where is this need to respond coming from? Is it ego? Is it insecurity? Is it fear of looking weak? Identifying the root of your reaction is far more powerful than forcing yourself to ignore something without understanding why it affects you in the first place. The power of detachment. Another powerful practice is detachment. Buddhism reminds us constantly nothing is permanent. Not criticism, not conflicts, not even our own identity. Today, something might upset you deeply, but a month from now or a year, will it really matter? Every time something disturbs you, ask yourself, will this still be important a year from now? If the answer is no, then let it go. So why give so much weight to things that never truly mattered in the first place? The meditation. The key practice. One of the most powerful ways to train your mind is through meditation. You don't need to sit for hours in total silence. Just a few minutes a day focusing on your breath and bringing your mind back to the present moment can create a profound shift. Training yourself not to react to every passing thought is just like training yourself not to react to every outside trigger. If you can calm the storm within no storm, outside can shake you. Surround yourself with peace. Equally important is learning to surround yourself with peace. You may not control everything around you, but you can control what you let in, who you spend time with, and where you place your energy. If you're always surrounded by conflict, negativity, and unnecessary drama, your mind will absorb the same chaos. But if you choose to fill your life with calmness, meaningful conversations, and moments of silence, that peace will slowly become your natural way of being. The power of humor. And here's another secret: learn to look at life with a touch of humor. Not everything has to be taken so seriously. Many problems disturb us only because we give them too much importance. But when you learn to laugh at certain situations, to see them as unnecessary drama, you don't need to step into life feels much lighter. This doesn't mean avoiding reality. It means refusing to carry burdens that were never yours in the first place. Reaching the unshakable mind. Over time, you'll notice that outside provocations no longer affect you. Not because you're forcing yourself to ignore them, but because they simply don't touch you anymore. There's nothing inside of you that reacts to them, and that's when you discover the state of an unshakable mind. Because in the end, it's not just about avoiding fights or ignoring criticism. It's about living with a peace that depends on no one and nothing. It's about waking up each day knowing that nothing external has the power to disturb your inner calm. It's about moving through the world without fear of what others may think or say. And when you reach that stage, you realize true freedom isn't about controlling what happens outside. It's about mastering what happens within. And that is the greatest victory any human being can achieve. Now imagine how different would your life feel if starting tomorrow, you no longer felt the urge to react to every comment, every criticism, every meaningless opinion. Imagine the peace you could live with if nothing outside could shake your inner balance. Not because you're hiding your emotions, not because you don't care, but because you've built something far stronger: control over where you place your attention. Most people spend their entire lives reacting, arguing over things that don't matter, wasting time trying to prove they're right, and draining themselves, defending against opinions that were never worth a second of their energy. But once you free yourself from this cycle, you open the door to a calmness that very few people ever get to feel. This isn't about letting others take advantage of you. It's not about staying silent when your voice truly matters. It's about knowing the difference between what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's about realizing that not every fight is worth entering, and not every opinion about you is worth answering. Buddhism teaches that suffering doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we react to it. And this is where your real strength lies. When you stop joining meaningless conflicts, when you stop allowing others to control your emotions, When you understand that you don't need anyone's approval to be at peace, that's the moment you become truly free. An invitation for you. So I invite you to bring this practice into your daily life. The next time someone tries to pull you into an argument, pause. The next time you feel the urge to react, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? If the answer is no, then walk away. Choose calmness over chaos. Choose your well-being over the short-lived satisfaction of proving a point. And since you've stayed with me until the very end, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below with one phrase that will remind you to stay centered. Protect your energy and avoid being pulled into negativity. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. Every week we explore wisdom and practices that help us build a life of peace awareness and true inner strength. And if you know someone who struggles with conflict, reacts too quickly, or often gets caught in negativity, share this with them. Sometimes a small shift in perspective is all it takes to change everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, your presence, and your openness to grow. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, protect your peace, because nothing is more precious than that.